Hi, everybody. Thank you to those that have been in the waiting room. We will give a minute or so to anyone else that is about to join. And we appreciate you joining this session, which we're very excited to talk you through. Session 3, I believe, James, of Marketing Under Attack. It is session 3.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Session 3. Amazing. Cool. Well, looks like, there's a number of you in, so let's get started. So, look, quick intro to myself. My name's Stuart. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Orbital X based in London. Very excited to be joined by my other co-founder, James, who's also with me in London, to talk to you about the secret to being seen everywhere by your audience without spending on paid media. James, what are we going to talk about today? What's like the highlights of the conversation and from your own opinion?
I think there's a couple of things that come to mind first and foremost, Stu. One is how, as marketers, can we optimize the amount of time and effort we put into something and maximize the value and performance outcomes that we get out the other side of it. And I think the session that we prepared today really talks to that point and gives some very tactical and tangible ways that we can create something, but make sure that every ounce of value is squeezed from it. And then just one final thought really on that topic and the headline we've got here today of Marketing Under Attack. A philosophy of ours has always been make your audience feel like you're everywhere. And if you can start to make your audience feel like you're everywhere, they will naturally start to convince themselves that they believe your message, that they should take a closer look at what your business does, and providing that journey that you set out for them makes sense, provides value to them, they will come closer to your business. And that first audience that you sometimes have as a marketer is your colleagues, it's your sales team, it's your leadership team. And when they're opening their computer and they see value coming from your business each and every single day, the more likely they are to engage in sharing tactics, putting their own name behind the core messages that are being pushed out the business. And we get that compounding effect as a marketing team, which means we don't have to be the massive teams of the past to really make an impact on our market and ultimately influence them to come closer to your business or our business. So really looking forward to the session, but those are the first couple of things that come to mind when I think about the title that we're operating with today.
Yeah. Love it. I think we had a couple of people message before asking, are we going to be talking a lot about AI? And I think it's worth like noting that as marketers and as revenue leaders, every day we're coming onto places like LinkedIn and it's all these crazy new AI tools that are going to solve all these amazing problems. And that's quite difficult to get out of your head. And I think it's important for those that are on the call today and this webinar that what we're going to tell you is not just saying that this AI feature or tool is the ultimate solution, because what is interesting is that most of the businesses we meet are using AI, of course, to produce content for their business. And if you think about the point at the start of this session, which is, if we want our audience to feel like we're everywhere, do we just use AI more and more and more in what we're producing? And what we're going to ultimately tell you through this conversation is in areas it's amazing, but in other areas there's other opportunities where you don't have to use AI or default to it to get the outcome. And why is that important? It's important because, when we look at what AI is producing for most businesses that we meet with, it's close to their own content, but there's certain things it can do really, really well and certain things it can't. And what we're going to talk you through today is a marketing program that's core input is not AI, and we'll reveal it in just a moment. Now, James, this was a bit of research conducted by MP Digital, who's one of the largest agencies working with some of the biggest businesses out of the USA to help launch marketing programs. And the reason I wanted to bring this in is that what this shows is, I guess, what people would look at and say it's the kind of core marketing programs that they would want to run, whether it's podcasts, infographics, blogs, videos, long form, white papers, webinars, and case studies. And what it shows you is the breakdown of the mix between the content being driving decision-making behaviors, consideration behaviors, or just awareness behaviors. And you can see this split across all of these different programs. And the really interesting thing here, James, is that you could use AI for pretty much every single one of these. But what we know is that businesses are deciding where and when should they. And I think the one that really stood out to us as one of the really interesting elements of these programs was the webinar component. Why do you think webinars are having such a high impact on decision consideration as a kind of bottom of funnel tactic in the modern marketing mix?
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me, Stuart, is it's the opportunity for a business to give the long form version of an answer to often a complicated problem. We try to optimize in marketing and sales for squeezing down the solution to a complex problem into a single sentence. And sometimes that is the first, that is the first thing that we do wrong as marketers, because we live in a complex world. We sell something that carries a high ticket cost, and it's not just one simple sentence that will make somebody realize that we are the right business to help them solve that problem, or regardless of whether it's us that helps them or not, how they solve a problem. Webinars gives us an opportunity to be the one that is learning in public, which gets positive goodwill in response, but it also allows us to cover the real details around why the problem exists, how you can ultimately act to solve it today, and what's on the other side of solving that problem. And I guess from our point of view, Stuart, by going through that long form process, so much of the rest of this picture, this graph, can actually be covered as well. And I guess that's what we're going to get into in a bit more detail, but it does seem to be a central point that leads to a business's ability to cover all of these other content types that we see on screen in this piece of research right now.
Yeah, look, I think that's the kind of key thing I'd love the audience to focus on, is that whether it's the video long form, which you can see here, or whether it's the webinar that you can see here, this is the only two options that the audience have to turn it into ultimately this mix of marketing programs and content that allows you to meet your buyer wherever they are on their discovery, right the way through to actually buying journey. And that is such an important point for everybody to retain, because in my opinion, if you only had the time or the resource to run one of these programs per month or every other month, it should be a long form video or it should be a webinar, because by doing that, you can turn it into an audio for a podcast. You can turn the learnings and the insights into infographics. You can write up some GEO optimized blogs off the back of it. You can turn it into some amazing snippet for video short form on YouTube, on TikTok, on places like LinkedIn. You can grab imagery off your presentation. You can produce a white paper, maybe with a little bit of massaging of the content, maybe some additional inputs. And then, of course, if you've got some customer stories coming through, you can also produce it into case studies. And I guess, James, what that opportunity is a highly efficient use of time to ultimately produce content that meets the buyer where they are. Is there anything that you could share of like tips on how the audience should think about that? If we're thinking about the top, middle and bottom of funnel, whether people are problem aware, not problem aware, anything that you can share there to help the audience think about maybe where they should place some of this content in their own planning for 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. So the place where I'll often begin is looking at the successes that you've had in the business to date. So a question that we'll often ask is, why did the last 5 customers that purchase your product or service buy right now? What drove them to take that action? What was the pain that they were experiencing, which was no longer bearable or tenable? In the answers to those questions, we immediately start to gain an insight to the pains and problems that our audience is suffering with on a day-to-day basis. And if we start to call those pains out explicitly in public, our audience will start to take notice and think, if they understand my problem and my pain that well, they probably know how to fix it. And that's what starts to bring them closer. The next step from that is find the person in your business that can talk to those pains and problems to the highest standard out of anybody. Now, that individual, if we ask them to write a white paper on how we tackle those pains and problems, it might not fit their skill set. But you can guarantee that they have been in boardrooms, they've been in sales meetings, they've been in product meetings where they are talking to this pain and problem in such granular detail that they can do it again. And they can do it again on a webinar. And once you start to create maybe a piece of content per pain or problem, 4 or 5, already we're at 6 months worth of content. We can then start to take things like the transcripts from those pieces of content and turn them into a white paper with a trained copywriter. Like you said, Stuart, make it available as a long form piece of content. What's the difference between a long form piece of content and a webinar? I think very simply here right now, we might say one is gated and one is ungated. You have to show a higher level of intent and interest in the problem in order to access a webinar because it's behind a sign-up form versus if I just go and search for it on YouTube. I might be a bit earlier in my education and discovery journey, but make it available on YouTube because we get a net benefit there also where YouTube will cookie them. The next time they return, they'll see the next piece of content that you've produced. And that will bring them closer and more likely to download the white paper. And to the point you were making earlier, this is where we can start to create images which capture the piece of insight that came out of that original piece of content development and recording.
Yeah.
It turns into a blog. It turns into short form video that creates the curiosity. Now, that's always where I'd start. And quite frankly, that's at the bottom towards the middle of the funnel. As we start to really spread our wings and want to achieve more reach and appeal to much broader parts of the market, quite honestly, businesses that should be your customer, but maybe today don't even know who you are, we need to think about the pains and the problems that sit 1 to 2 degrees away from what you explicitly solve. And we need to develop a narrative which is ultimately where the world is going. Now, to share our narrative, Stuart, we talk about it a lot. How are marketing departments successfully doing more with less? The businesses that do find ways to do more with less are ultimately going to be the ones that win. Why? Because it opens up room for additional spending in certain areas, which lead to return. It becomes a much more efficient marketing approach. Now here we created a podcast around that topic and title, and that's where we're really learning in public and controlling that conversation. Now we need to develop that type of thing to suit more of the top of funnel. And at the bottom of the funnel, we always need to obsess over our case studies. When there is a win, we need to make sure that we pull it out into the right formats, which are consumable, and get that spread out across our channels also. Yeah. But that's also ultimately where I would start, and then what I would move into once we've got that initial core engine running.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I think a couple of those call outs there that you mentioned for the audience to retain is get on YouTube, 100% get on YouTube. I think they've got one of the best cookie trackers, and the ability to like make the content repeat and push you further down the funnel is amazing. It's super easy to set up. Like that is an absolute no-brainer. TikTok, there's a lot of great stuff going on there as well. Again, all coming from that webinar content, that video content. And then with the podcasts, obviously absolute no-brainer to be on places like Spotify. But the other beauty with everything that you're producing is there is an opportunity to distribute it through the typical channel that businesses are using, which is obviously LinkedIn. But really, like the key point about making your audience feel like you're everywhere is that you have to look at the channels and the places that you consume content, whether it's during your working day, whether it's at the end of your working day, whether it's at the weekend, or maybe whilst you're on holiday. And it might sound strange to think about it that way, but if that's where you consume content, guess what? That's where your peers are consuming content. And ultimately, if you want to be everywhere, you have to cover these channels as effectively and as efficiently as possible, and not do what we see 99% of companies do, which is they produce content, they put it on their website, they maybe do a post about it on LinkedIn, maybe a email out to their marketing database, and that's it. It disappears into the ether. Like, think about the way that you can redistribute, repurpose, leverage, re-leverage the content that you're producing, because there is a massive opportunity there. And you might be saying, well, do I really need to? And I think like what we're seeing just across the board is that the number of touch points to close a deal has increased significantly. And like it kind of comes back to this point where we've heard so many businesses go, well, surely AI is the solution. And I think coming back to this point here is like AI has undoubtedly got a place in this, but the content that you produce and that real undeniably human core input, which we would recommend being in the video format, whether it's through webinars or long form video, is an absolute unlock for your business. And one thing that I think is very important just to mention is that there really should be some caution around the use of AI, because we have had businesses that said, well, we're going to use it for our video long form, we're going to use it for our webinars. And of course you can, right? Of course you could use it across these types of marketing programs. But we hear more and more often than not this type of commentary. The moment I found out a video I watched was all AI from a thought leader, somebody that they trusted, I didn't watch one ever again, because it was really difficult to decipher between what was the human and what was the machine. And I think that's just something for the audience to consider, is that whilst you could, my recommendation is that actually a much better use of AI would be using AI to turn the transcripts, as James mentioned, into an initial blog that you can read and tweak in the copy that's produced, as a place to leverage it, rather than trying to come up with a fully AI set of webinar programs as a starting point. So where we come back to is this point on being undeniably human. And one of the things I would pose to the audience as you think about 2026 and beyond is tying into these points about being undeniably human, thinking about the type of content that you want to produce and have the highest impact and reach the highest impact in performance, is who in the business is able to turn into a B2B celebrity, or who is able to own a narrative and start pushing that narrative out to the market. What we're seeing is that exec storytelling is really becoming the new creator economy. It has a positive impact across the full business, whether it's your ability to drive lead gen, whether it's recruitment drives, whether it's fundraising, whether it's driving exits. There's a massive benefit of having that undeniably human content front and center for the audience that you're trying to grab the attention of. And what we're seeing is that the opportunity with influencers, paid activations, people with celebrity-like status, event sponsorship, all of these great things is only going to become bigger in 2026 and beyond. And the final bit that I would mention is that we've already spoken about it, but ultimately the program that we're seeing for the highest impact on reach, time efficiency, performance and video content production, it is webinars. And we've ran hundreds and hundreds of these over the last 12 months, and it still delivers the best performance of all organic campaigns that I think we see across the board. And what's been so interesting for us is that you hear sometimes people saying webinars are dead, nobody wants to consume that type of content anymore. We're seeing the complete opposite. I think webinars that are done right, that are there to educate and inspire and entertain rather than to sell features and functions of your product, is absolutely crushing it across the board. Excuse me. James, will you talk about the way that we see businesses leverage those webinars, and maybe get into some of the detail of what we talk about cascading content, which again touches upon what we spoke about making the audience feel like we're everywhere?
Yeah, absolutely, Stuart. I think just to pick up on a couple of the points that you made on the last few slides, which really feed into what we're talking about here with webinars, but undeniably human content, and then of course that exec storytelling piece. Webinars allows us to tell that long form story. That long form story is the complete picture of where we were, where it's going, what you can do about it today, what you will get if you get it right and fix this problem ultimately. What we're then able to do is break that great content down into these highlight snippets, which capture just part of the story. They create the curiosity. By their very design, they're incomplete pieces of information that hint at the solution for a problem or acknowledge a problem that someone else will acknowledge exists, and feeds them back either to the parent asset or to our website for them to learn a little bit more. So they're incomplete in their very nature. Now, as you've got in brackets here, Stuart, a great place to use AI is right here. AI will analyze the transcript. It will start to give us insights based on what it thinks would be a great viral snippet for our audience, and immediately turns our video editor's attention to where they should cut out the video snippet. And then from a personal perspective, what we layer on is some additional production features that are still best kept in the hands of humans, like rotoscope, which is like 3D graphics on screen. But many businesses are successfully using AI just to create the caption video and get it out to market. If you are going to do those highlight snippets with the caption video, do just do a bit of a proofread on the captions, because we've seen so many videos out there in the ether in the past which have got typos in there. It's miscaptured what the speaker is talking about. And again, to Shu's point earlier, that can lose credibility. They clearly misused AI and they've lost credibility as a result of something that should really be building credibility. We can also then start to build blogs in record speed, because what we want to do is we want to direct the AI to pick out the key points that were discussed during the session and help us build out something which is very readable, repeatable, and usable. Maybe capture the 5 key insights from this webinar. That becomes a great listicle. Or it might be a guide. Using the insights shared during this session, how can you solve this type of problem in 5 steps? These types of pieces of content not only are really easy to read and are engaging, also breaking out into LinkedIn posts, because they can be individual tiles or carousels or images which can be shared as a social post. But they also feed into the way that GEO or AEO, whichever way you're calling it right now, is really looking for content to absorb into their machines to answer the questions that ChatGPT uses, to name one of the answer engines out there, are ultimately posing and looking for answers on. You also then have the opportunity to create a longer form version. And what we've seen here is this 30-minute piece of content, which maybe took 60 minutes to prepare, to get the call sheet in order. What are we going to cover during this session? So 90 minutes of work has led to enough content that could feed your social output and your marketing output for 4 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this highly valuable, high lift human input piece of generation to get all of these net benefits, which are undeniably human points of view, because it always draws back to the recording from one simple action.
Yeah, love it. Love it. I think it's just unbelievably good use of time. Obviously, you and I speak about this a lot, and it's like, even just finding an afternoon on a Sunday with your co-founder or with your head of product to record 2 or 3 of these can literally give you months and months worth of content. And I think that's one of the kind of really big opportunities. And I think what we've shown here is that one input is giving you all of that distribution opportunity, and ultimately you can tier the content and the narrative for the top, middle, and bottom of funnel, so that you get the attention for those that are problem unaware, those that are somewhat aware but maybe not motivated to buy, and those that are in the market to buy today. But without getting into the kind of paid opportunity, I think it is really important to just mention one of the big unlocks, which is ultimately what organic opportunities there are on LinkedIn with the content that you're producing. And let's take the webinar as an example, because LinkedIn is really well set up to give you the opportunity, assuming that your network on LinkedIn is the network that you're trying to sell to, which I would imagine for most people on the call it is that you've got this opportunity where you can launch an event on LinkedIn. You can either do it as a live stream, which means that you'd use a tool like Restream and get it onto LinkedIn so it appears like it is a live stream, whether you pre-record or not. But LinkedIn gives you this opportunity to not only set that event up, and if you want, you can push people to different landing pages. But what we're seeing work really, really well is the ability to launch these events and drive signups and invites to your target audience through LinkedIn's own platform. And I think this is really important to mention, because we meet a ton of businesses that they've had really bad experiences with webinars before. And normally we turn around to them and say, can we assume that your last webinar was maybe marketed to your existing CRM, which is probably not in the healthiest place possible, and that those that did end up signing up were either maybe consultants, maybe they were former existing customers, and there was no real net new audience created. And normally that is the big challenge that the businesses have faced previously. And this is one example with LinkedIn where you can actually decide on your network, who do you actually want to get their eyeballs on this topic, drive them to the event page, because people then get those notifications, and you're starting to drive that net new audience to this particular activation that you're looking to get people to attend. And I think there's a really big opportunity there for businesses that leverage LinkedIn in that way to make sure that they actually get the engagement that they want if they were just looking at LinkedIn as one of the distribution engines for a webinar. The other one which I want to mention is that how we solve that problem that I just mentioned about CRM at Orbital X, where most CRMs have got maybe bad data, incorrect email addresses, wrong ICP, maybe low domain authority, so we're not even landing in people's inboxes, is that one of the growth systems we put in place is understanding who is that perfect audience that you would want to see this content, and how do we produce systems that allow us to get this content in front of them in the right way. And whether that's email, whether that's HTML email, whether that's dedicated BDR calling resource to get people to understand that this topic is something that they should prioritize, is a massive unlock that we've built for our clients. And I think that's one of the key things to remember about these webinars as a program for 2026, is that it's not just about producing that content and distributing it through your previous channels that maybe didn't work. You do have to innovate, and you do have to think about ways to really be front and center for that audience in a set of channels that maybe you've underutilized previously, or perhaps growth systems that you haven't previously invested in. And certainly we'd be more than happy to talk you through them at a point over the coming days or over the coming weeks before the end of 2025, to show you exactly how we build these systems, so you can start to think about the impact on your NQLs or your SQLs or your close won revenue with these types of programs, which is something that we're very, very excited by as we go into 2026. And I think one of the kind of final pieces here, that we wanted to share with you is that we've obviously talked about webinars, but one of the other ones that was mentioned in that MP Digital research was the video, the longer form video content. And this is an example of a video interview. Now, whether that's founder to founder, whether that's a founder to a customer, maybe a founder to a thought leader, really, you've got the same opportunity as what we spoke about on the previous section on webinars. That one piece of content that maybe you record on Riverside or you go into a high production studio environment allows you to produce the LinkedIn business post, allows you to create the founder post for that B2B celebrity status that we spoke about, more video snippets, marketing emails, BDR sequences which talk to the particular points of discussion from that interview. And that in itself is 25 pieces of content across different channels, different mediums, different formats that again allow your audience to just feel like you're everywhere, and it's very, protected in your time input to get that outcome. And I think that's something that we are seeing time and time again, James, that if done right, it's just giving you that longevity in your programs to make your audience feel like you're absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I think, if we look at this breakdown of outcomes or deliverables from one single piece of video content, great marketing teams with the right partners and resources are achieving this in a day of work. They're producing the piece of content. They're immediately getting to work on things like the highlight snippets, because the highlight snippets have already had some assistance from AI tools to tell them where the virality lies. We're immediately being able to draft LinkedIn business posts, founder posts that carry different points of view, maybe around the same single clip, just to challenge the audience and get them thinking about it in different ways. And it's set and it's forget. And it really is the needle mover for businesses, particularly when they've gone through that exercise that you just mentioned of very clearly defining the audience that they want to see it often, the audience that they want to make feel like their business is everywhere. Because once that audience has been defined, making sure this content reaches them on email, on social, even calling exercises too, will really start to open their eyes to the offering this business has, how well they understand their problems, and ultimately start to place a little space in their mind that when it comes to that particular problem being the one that they want to solve next, they're the business they jump to first.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love it. Amazing. Well, I think I wanted to just share a couple of quick examples of something we spoke about at the start, which was, like how simple it can be to turn content into even something like imagery. And this is from Gong, that I'm sure everybody's familiar with, where, they were taking this content, this data, these insights, and not only producing amazing content on their website, but then producing imagery for places like LinkedIn or whether it was on their own sales decks or whatever that was. And there's some amazing examples from Gong as an example, business that has done that incredibly well. And certainly if you want any other examples, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to show you ways that businesses are leveraging this type of content to share insights that people find genuinely helpful and genuinely useful in their day-to-day, to allow them to share it internally, allow them to remember that business that helped them with that piece of insight as they go and push their own initiatives forward internally. And I think it's important just to point out that, at Orbital X, we've built our business to make these types of campaigns and optimizations as easy as possible for our clients. And what that means is that we have built this marketing operating system that still leverages human expert input, that is enabled through an amazing team within the Orbital X business, plus the best-in-class technologies, both our own technology that we've built, but also the best-in-class third-party technologies, to allow us to turn these different marketing programs into content and into high-performing content that makes your audience feel like you're everywhere. And the beauty of that particular model is, as we've said throughout this conversation, is that it's organic growth plays that exist today. And of course, you can do a lot with paid, but we've intentionally spoken about the organic opportunity within what we do. And if you're interested in learning more about the way our pods work or what our marketing operating system actually means for you day to day, then please get in touch. There'll be a little notification coming out now that allows you to get some time. But we'd love to show you some of the ways that we're turning those one pieces of content into months and months of follow-on content, so that we make the audience feel like we are absolutely everywhere. And look, like, I think what we'd love to do is just a kind of quick wrap up of what we covered. Obviously we've covered webinars and the opportunity that webinars in particular give you to fuel this undeniably human marketing campaign, and the way that content can just compound and have impact repeatedly over a prolonged period of time in such a time efficient manner. And you know, whether you're somebody that initially thought webinars are dead and people aren't consuming that type of content anymore, we can assure you, having run hundreds of them over the last 12 months, they are absolutely thriving for businesses that do it right. The second one was around those examples of the gone content and really thinking about what are those narratives, or what are the little stories that you can tell, whether it's to make you feel like a B2B celebrity, or whether it's just about producing content that's genuinely helpful to help people that are very top of the funnel, so they're not problem aware, or those that are actually in the buying decision. And ultimately, there are these growth systems that allow your organic strategy to work harder for you. And I think it's important that you don't default to the paid activations, because it can get expensive very, very quickly, and really think about the organic opportunities that exist in your day-to-day work as a marketer, as a business that's trying to grow faster and more efficiently as you go into 2026. James, that's everything from me. Is there anything you want to add as a final thought for the audience?
Look, danger of repeating myself here, but I just want to pick out a couple of the key points that you've made today, Stuart, which really sort of landed with me. The first was the audience piece. You know, all of that organic opportunity that you were just talking to there really begins to realize itself when you have absolute confidence in the data set that you're presenting this valuable content to. So take the time to look inwards at the quality of your CRM. How many bounces are you seeing? Do you feel like it's covering all of the businesses that should be hearing about your service and the problems that you solve for? If the answer is no, fix it, right? And of course, we would be absolutely happy to help with that. It's something we specialized in doing for the last 10 years. But get that right. Get really confident in the data. The second piece that you mentioned earlier, Stuart, is, you know, webinars are, you know, this central part of not only creating something that provides a lot of downstream content opportunity, it legitimately generates ICP1 leads from the get-go. If you are doing webinars already and you are seeing existing customers show up, partners, consultants, people you already know, or the numbers are low, there could be something in your marketing tactics which is just a little bit off. What we would expect is that you should be seeing a 1% conversion on your audience from your ICP1 audience in terms of registrants. And so if you're not hitting those numbers, so if you've got a database of 5,000 people, if you're not seeing at least 50 ICP1 leads register as a result of your marketing tactics, there's improvements that could be made. If you were benefiting from at least 50 ICP1 leads every single month from this one action that holds all this downstream opportunity as well, would that be a good thing for your business from an organic standpoint? If the answer is yes, take some time to look a little bit closer at it. Take a look at a bit more at the content that we've shared during this session. I believe we've got an ebook, webinar mastery lead magnet that we'll be sharing soon. So if you'd like a copy of that, just let us know in the comments now. We'll make sure to share it out with you, or we can set up a call sooner and share with you the insights from that. And then the final piece was just around the creator economy point that you made, Stuart. The creator economy as we know it, when we log on to any one of our social apps and we watch somebody showing you how to hit a better golf shot, or someone how to make your favorite meal, there's a certain level of complexity that tops out in the creator economy right now. And that complexity often tops out way before you get to B2B solutions. Business to business solutions are coming from a coordination of different perspectives. It's not just the CEO, it's the head of product, it's the head of engineering, the head of compliance, that are all coming together with their points of view, aggregating it together through a single story of a business that's ultimately winning trust and making people go and part with big 5-figure, 6-figure, 7-figure contracts to solve these big enterprise problems that we've got. And the better and more efficiently you can mobilize all those specialists in your business, you'll start to turn your business into the authority on a particular problem. because it's collective intelligence that really makes the difference. And when you do that through the lens of the B2Cification of B2B, you make it entertaining, but you make it educational. It's edutainment, whatever we're calling it these days. You'll start to win trust quicker than you could have ever hoped for, and your business will grow. That was me just bringing a few bits together.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, no, really great. And yeah, we've covered a ton on that. And yeah, as you said, the Webinar Mastery Lead Magnet will be available for all of those that have attended. So we'll get that over to you. But we're, of course, here to speak if you want to learn more as you plan for 2026. So thank you, everybody that's joined. Really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you in the next episode in the coming weeks. So thank you. And thank you, James, for your great input as always.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Stuart.
Bye-bye.